AI is not going to replace sales reps, but it is going to replace the average sales rep. Sales, when done right, is the best job in the world, but sales, when done wrong, is the worst job in the world. The best way to think about ChatGPT is like an all-knowing oracle that knows everything, but it needs a lot of direction.
There's no limit
Yeah.
to how we can use ChatGPT to make us better salespeople. It's limited by our inability to think about what's going to differentiate me.
Literally, sales reps, I think, get treated worse than parking wardens, to be honest.
The problem is too many people who do what we do, they're going in to try and sell a solution, which is an insurance policy, when it may not be the insurance that's the issue. It's likely something else in the operations, and they're not taking the time to understand that.
The two qualities and values that I personally believe make great sales reps is grit and resourcefulness, and neither of those can be taught. They can be adapted. And
the things we're talking about are the things that made good salespeople great salespeople all along. You're just taking that approach and you're modifying it and you're leveraging technology.
And so it's, how do you use all these tools behind the scenes to empower you, to make you sound more credible? And the insights that has been dropped on this particular podcast, I feel, will help you guys get there. As sales reps, it's so easy to get bogged down in the speeds and feeds and the lingo and all those things that we say, but we don't necessarily talk like our customers talk. And so the more you can talk like your customer, the more it's going to resonate with them.
We have to slow down to speed up. If you can just stop and put a framework around this and put a system in place, you're going to take the time that ChatGPT saves you from research and everything else. One of the reasons why I'm a good producer is because I'm naturally curious and I ask naturally curious questions. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game. Today, I've got what I think will be an electric guest, Mr. Lance Dowdell, co-founder of Motiverse, and we are going to talk about all kinds of cool stuff that producers can be using. But what drew my attention to him was a post he had on LinkedIn. And I'm going to tell you what the post was. I'm going to have him introduce himself first so you can hang on every word about who he is before we get into the meat of it. So, Lance, go ahead, man. Grip and rip, brother. Tell him who you are and kind of what your background is, and let's get into it.
Yeah, man. So thanks for jumping on, man. It's really weird being the guest of a podcast. I'm used to being the host,
There
so
you go.
this is kind of awesome. Yeah, so my name's Lance Dowdell. Not American, as you can tell from my very American accent. Originally from New Zealand, and so I've been in the insurance space now for probably 4-ish years. On the insurer tech side. So working with agencies, MGAs, all things technology. Recently, in the last probably year, Motiverse has got going. So we're helping agencies with their PR, marketing, sales, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, man, the reason why I put that post out in the context for the listeners was how to use Chat GPT to pull together lead lists for you. The reason why I put that out there is because,
Oh, I don't know. Maybe because it would get everybody's attention. I mean,
well, yeah, that too, man, that too. But I'm thinking, like, you see the top of your intro, it's like, what's up in sales, and the best sales reps now are utilizing these kinds of tools because there's another really good guy you should follow. I've followed him for probably 10 years now. His name is John Barrows. He's probably the number one guy in sales, in my opinion. So he put out a while ago, he said, AI is not going to replace sales reps, but it is going to replace the average sales rep. So the rep that relies on automation and scripts and meta tags and all those basic things that can be automated through AI. So the best reps are going to be the ones that leverage these tools. And ChatGPT has been completely huge for me in sales. So yes, the output can be lead lists, but there's a bunch of context that lies underneath that in order to get to that point. And so for any reps that are listening, take the time to train a ChatGPT model on your business and what you do first. And the process of how you do that is go to ChatGPT, and I'll give you the prompts. And so go to ChatGPT and say, go to this website, which is my company, www.company.com. Learn everything you can about us. Here is our sales presentation slide deck, and then you can attach PowerPoints into ChatGPT. And what that's going to do is that's going to learn, and say, this is a memory update. And what it'll do is it'll come back and spit out, yes, I've learned this about you. This is what you do, summarized. And then from there, what you want to do is put in your ideal customer profile. So if you guys have that, like every good sales rep should have that listed out. If you don't, then I recommend going to your marketing department and your marketing people and say, hey, can I get a copy of our ICP? And you can say, okay, I want to go after these kinds of companies with this kind of revenue, with this kind of headcount, and this kind of geography. And then on the customer side, on my personas are, I don't know, VPs of operations or chief operation officers or supply chain or whoever it is that you go after, or high net worth individuals if you're on the personal line side. And then what will happen from there is ChatGPT will learn all of that. And now what you want to do is go to it and say, please build me a lead list of the top 50 companies that fit my ideal customer profile. Please give me the names of the key people that I care about in these accounts. And then give me the first name, last name, company, LinkedIn, and title. And what ChatGPT will do is it will publish it for you. It'll first be just in like an output, like it'll say inside the chat, da, 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 da. At the end, it'll say, would you like this in a spreadsheet or a PDF? Say yes. And what it'll do is it'll create the spreadsheet for you. And so ChatGPT, and this is a word to the wise, it's something that I came across, is ChatGPT. The best way to think about ChatGPT is like an all-knowing oracle that knows everything, but it needs a lot of direction. So when you do create that spreadsheet, make sure, please create a spreadsheet that has first name, last name, company, title, LinkedIn profile, and then it will create that spreadsheet for you and it'll output it and then you can grab it and go. That's the top to bottom process of how to do that.
Have you ever tried to get it to give you email addresses as well?
Yeah, I have. There's a roundabout way. Most of the time, it'll say it can't do it. So it'll give you things like hunter.io, I know is a good one to find emails, or a couple other ones out there. I played around. It's kind of okay, but where I came into issues was trying to map that together in a spreadsheet format so you can kind of do it separately. Because ChatGPT will give you like best guess emails. And then you can basically take that and confirm it against hunter.io.
Yeah, Hunter or Mail Tester. I was almost wondering though if you could prompt it to scan the LinkedIn profiles contact information section for the email because a
Yeah,
lot of people, believe it or not, still have their actual email address attached to the
yeah,
contact info
yeah.
on their LinkedIn profile. You just
Right.
can't, you have to get to it by clicking a couple of times to do that. I also wondered if there was a way that you could backdoor it based on people's login because they're likely logging in with their email.
Yeah, absolutely. And full disclosure, I don't know if ChatGPT has that kind of access because I don't know
Yeah,
if
I don't know. I'm going to try it as soon as we get off of here, though, and
yeah,
I'll let you know
that'd be
back.
what yeah, let me know. Yeah, that'll be awesome, man. And at the end of the day, to be fair though, the list that I pulled, like I had like our customers, for example, are like MGAs, agencies, insurtechs, and I say, build me a list of 50 MGAs, build me a list of 50 agencies, build me a list of 50 insurtechs, and get me the people that I want to be speaking to and their LinkedIn profiles. And to be fair, the LinkedIn is being more than good enough. And I don't mind taking a little bit of time to go figure out emails myself.
Yeah,
Um,
it gives you the opportunity to explore their profile anyhow and figure out
exactly.
other commonalities or whatever. That makes sense too.
Exactly. So yeah, it's a really good resource, man. And just for anybody listening, ChatGPT, just don't fall in the rut of using it to create everything for you. It's just like you can have it come up with messaging, you can have it come up with subject line, like it can literally do everything for you. The problem with that is it's very obviously AI when somebody receives it. So what I would recommend people do is just have ChatGPT create like a framework or a blueprint, be like, hey, I want to reach out to I don't know, VPs of construction in the real estate industry in Texas or something like that, right? And then say, give me a 5-step email sequence that I can put together based on my value proposition, based on what you know. And then ChatGPT will go da, 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 create all of it. Honestly, just grab that, copy it, and then put it into like a document, and then just go through and make it sound like you. That's what I found has been the best. And then if you take it, like AI should be like leading you and making recommendations. You should never ever depend on it. But
Right.
it's a really good starting point. And just a super quick tip, if you get a bunch of output and you're like, okay, I kind of like this, like if you prompt ChatGPT and say, give me 10 subject lines that I can send based on this email campaign around best practices for most opens because ChatGPT can research that for you. And so it'll go da, 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 10, be like, okay, I've got 10. These are kind of okay. Okay, suggest 10 more. Okay, da, 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 10. Okay, well, I like number 2 and 4 from the first one. I like 6 and 7 from the second one. Please combine number 2 and 6 from the first with 6 and 7 from the second, and it can go through and do that through for you through process of elimination. And that's how I found success with it. And that's how we have been delivering like a 45, 46% open rate for our customers on their emails.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, like, and I don't mind if anybody rips this off. Honestly, you can. I'm the one who would license them to do that. But we
Yeah,
had Jay Schwedelson on the podcast a couple months back, and he's the
yeah,
guy, I think his website's like emailsubjectline.com or something. His whole thing
yeah,
is email marketing, creative subject lines, and everything else. So I've gotten to the point where if I'm going to send out prospecting emails, I'll actually go in to that project because
yeah,
everything we do in Power Producers is under a podcast recording project. Because if I
yeah,
find somebody that's I shouldn't say if I find somebody who's intelligent. Almost everybody I have on here, is a relatively intelligent person. But if they have good ideas and I want to flag them for later, I can
yeah,
go back and have Chat GPT go into that actual chat in that folder, and
yeah,
I'm generating really good subject lines just based off of the podcast conversation transcript that we have in Chat GPT, and it's getting us great
yeah.
open rates because it's completely different than what they're getting from anybody else.
Yeah, I agree, man. And just to add on to what you're saying, one thing that anybody out there can do, anybody that uses any form of an AI note taker, like Otter.ai, if anybody uses Gong or anything, you always get like a recording of your meetings with your customers. What you can do is take that recording as a link, put it into ChatGPT and say, learn this conversation. And what it'll do is it'll learn everything your customer says, and that becomes a memory update. And so now what you're going to do is when you're making value propositions, when you're making messaging, it works on call, it works on social, it works on email, is ChatGPT will learn how your customers talk and listen to what your customers are saying on their challenges and will wrap it into what it knows about your products and your services and what you do. And then it gives you way deeper messaging because what I've always found is as sales reps, it's so easy to get bogged down in the speeds and feeds and the lingo and all those things that we say, but we don't necessarily talk like our customers talk. And so the more you can talk like your customer, the more it's going to resonate with them. Because one really good thing that John Barrow said years ago that I learned was humans are still tribal in terms of like, are you like me? And if I deem you are like me, then I'm going to instantly like, trust, and have credibility for you. And so if you speak like an agency, I think, in my opinion, again, opinion of one person, agencies have a dislike of insurtech reps because they listen to how these insurtech reps are talking and they don't sound like they know insurance, right? And so that's the issue is how do you break that barrier and talk like your customer and inputting all of the stuff into something like a chat GPT to then turn around language and wording and phrasing and comments that your customers say, that's going to break that barrier down.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do that a lot too because I mean, we're in an industry where a lot of the knowledge you have is technical
Yeah.
And I've got letters behind my name. I know what I'm talking about when I talked about coverage, lines of coverage and all of that other stuff. And we do fall into the habit. If you look at who your peer group is, most of the people I hang out with are
Uh-huh.
other agents or they're in my online community and that's the dialect in which we speak. But to your point, you go talk to the general public. Last thing anybody ever wants is to have someone talking over their head at them when they're in a
Yep.
sales presentation or
Yep.
even in email or a video, that you create for somebody. So I've always been very cognizant of that. And
Yeah.
depending on what the message is and how complicated it is, will determine what grade level that I ask ChatGPT to rewrite that in. So there are times, and I mean, I've done enough work with med device companies and pharma companies in the
Hmm.
life sciences sector earlier in my career that I know that if you have an informed consent document for clinical trials and research, that it
Yeah.
needs to be written at a sixth grade reading level because that's what the general public, the wide variety, the majority of them can actually read and interpret at a
Yeah.
sixth grade reading level. And if I've got a complex topic that is
Yeah.
affecting premium rates, whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
like reinsurance, for example, I could go rip on reinsurance for, an hour if I had to. But if I do that, nobody's going to understand what I'm talking about. If you're my
Yeah.
neighbor across the street who's griping that your homeowner's insurance went up. So a
Yep.
lot of the time, what I'll do is I'll either record the message in a Zoom like this so that I can just speak freely, like I normally would. And then I'll pop the transcript in there and say, please organize this into the
Mhm.
most logical format for either a social post or a blog post or whatever else, and
Yep.
be sure to do it at this reading level, whatever it is. And
Yep.
then maybe sometimes sixth grade seems way too elementary, and I don't want to insult people, so I say do it in an eighth or a ninth grade or whatever else, and you can
Yeah.
see the difference in it. But I mean, there are a lot of agents out there that are very proud of what they know. They should be because they go through a lot of education to get designations and things. But you
Mhm.
also look like you're a pompous, arrogant prick when you're in front of
Yeah.
a client
Agree.
because you're talking over their head. They
Yep.
want to trust and understand that you know your stuff, but they're
Yep.
not going to do that if you're talking over their head. They're going to do it if you can relay it in a way that they understand it. That's always going to give you more trust with your prospect than if you
Yeah.
just go in spouting off.
I agree, man. And you're preaching to the choir here, man. Like I'm on the same side as you with that. One thing I want to add on to that is all of this like technical stuff. I know my solution. I know how to fix this. Great. One thing that I have lived by is if you can articulate and understand your customers' problems better than they can, then they're going to instantly be like, wow, you are the person for me to solve this thing. So therefore, it's the combination of do I trust you enough to solve this problem? Therefore, this technical speaker is going to be good because it's all credibility. Or is it, I don't believe that you can solve this problem, and now you're just trying to convince me through all of this, like, look how smart I am, right? So to your point, it's how can you speak on a level where that person can understand, because sales reps get caught in the web of I assume my customer knows what I know, and I assume if I say to my customer ABC thing, they're going to understand it. And so I think what you're doing is extremely smart because you want to put across that message to that customer to be like, yo, I know what I'm doing. Here's the solution. Here's how I can help you. While your customer also receives that on the other hand as well. So I think if the successful equation, in my opinion, is understand the problem, articulate the problem. Does the customer agree that you understand their world? Now we're presenting a solution for them, and here's how we're going to get them there in a way that means something to them and is on their level. Would you agree with that?
I agree with it, except I'm going to even add something else to that. In our industry, not like when, especially if you're going into, let's just say, a troubled workers' comp account, which is typically, one of the places I'm going to be found.
Mhm.
We can't assume that the customer even knows their problem. They
Yeah.
may be getting bad results because they don't even know what the actual root cause of
Yeah.
that bad result is. And the example that I would use is is an inflated experience modifier on workers' comp.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? They may not know that the reason that that's inflated is because they don't have a return to work program in place. The
Yeah.
problem, the symptom is the inflated experience mod, but the real problem is they don't have a light duty program because
Yeah.
nobody's ever gone in and said, hey, let me explain to you how this works. Number one, it's relatively complicated and you need to be able to water that messaging down. Number
Hmm.
two, and probably equally as important, agents don't even know how to explain, like they don't even know that how it's calculated and what it
Yep.
matters. So if I can go in and say, you're paying more than you should for your workers' comp. I 100% agree. It's because your experience modification factor is
Hmm.
inflated. But after reviewing your loss runs, your real issue is it appears you don't have a light duty program. Has anybody discussed this with you before? And the
Yeah.
answer is, typically, yeah, but we don't want to just create work for creating work's sake. And I say,
Mhm.
I can get it. A lot of people think that because they don't understand the actual financial ramifications. But the reality is,
Yeah.
that if you can get somebody back to work and you don't have lost time on your claim, the
Yeah.
value of that claim as a medical only claim is reduced by 70% when it
Yeah.
goes into your mod formula. So you're actually not creating work, you're saving yourself money. It's a very good business decision. Let's figure out what are the jobs that you need people to be doing in your organization that you have a harder time hiring for that
Yeah.
a light duty person could come in and do. And it's typically working in a call center, handling collections, things
Yeah.
like that, things that are actually important to the business that they don't have to go and invent. And
Yeah.
then they can go in and actually, solve the actual problem. The problem is too many people who do what we do is they're going in to try and sell a solution, which is an
Mhm.
insurance policy, when it may not be the insurance that's the issue. It's likely something else in the operations, and they're not taking the time to understand that. I
Yep.
think that newer producers have a huge leg up versus what I did when I came into the industry 20 years ago because of
Yeah.
a lot of the technology that they do have available to them. And one of those things specifically that I've enjoyed using just because it validates or it even enhances things that I know is the deep research piece where I know it's going out, crawling the web, and
Yeah.
really drilling down. So if I'm a new producer and I don't understand an industry, I'm
Yeah.
probably going to go into ChatGPT deep research and have
Yeah.
it identify the common problems, maybe give it a good overview of the industry, the company size and shape, how much revenue they're doing, number of employees. If they've
Yeah.
got an issue with workers' comp and you know about it, maybe you tell them what the experience mod is, but just say, help me understand the common
Mhm.
issues that would be um, identified in this company based on what I've taught you, and it's going
Yeah.
to do a really good job of drilling down and coming back and giving you a solid overview. From
Yeah.
there, as the producer, you could go in and say, have it prompt you with the questions that you should be asking while
Mhm.
you're at the point of sale. But then what I also do is I go in and I tell it, now pretend that I'm the CFO of this company. What are the questions that I should be thinking about to ask to the salesperson when they come in? So now,
Yeah.
as a producer, not only am I getting the list of questions it's telling me I should ask, but it's
Yeah.
giving me a list of questions that are likely to be asked so I can prompt or come up with my answers before I ever go in anticipation of how the meeting's going to go. And you may not get every single one of them right, but the
Yeah.
chances are you're going to be able to have enough of a conversation based on them asking you the same questions that you may never get to the ones that weren't in the chat GPT response. So that's, I mean, to me, that's a very practical way as
Yeah.
a salesperson to use it. And
Yeah.
it really is a matter of just taking the time to do it. It blows my mind how many people aren't willing to sit down and
Mhm.
prepare ahead of time for for a sales call when
Yeah.
it's literally something that would take you 30 minutes, whereas I used to spend hours having to do all this research.
Yeah, I agree 100%, man. And that's what I said at the top of this podcast was the best reps are going to leverage these kinds of tools to survive. The average sales rep is going to go away. And so, to your point, it's how do we use all this technology in a way that's going to make our life easier? Because I can understand if you've never used ChatGPT before and you're listening to this and you're like, oh my goodness, this is so overwhelming. I will tell you for free, it's really not as bad as you think it is. And so I think if you take everything, that David's saying and you follow his methodology, it's actually going to give you some really good output. And the one thing that I wanted to add on top of that was you can also use ChatGPT to come up with the priorities for the personas that you're going after. So you can say things like, what are the top five challenges or priorities for CFOs in the, I don't know, tech space and financial services, right? And it'll say da 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 da. And then you can take those and you can map that against either are you selling them a particular line of insurance? Are you getting into a particular, product offering? How do those things do things combine? Because I tell you for free, if you walk up to a CFO in a meeting with them and then you say, hey, look, the CFOs that we work with currently, their top priorities are bang, 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 even if those aren't their priorities, they're like, well, they're not our priorities, but these are, they're going to be like, wow, this person knows me, right? And so that's why, and David, you'll know this as well, is the worst question you can ask as a sales rep is what keeps you up at night? And it's like, as a sales rep, you should know that ahead of time. So if you follow the structure of what we've been talking about how to use ChatGPT to do that, you're going to be massively armed when you go into your customers and taking a step back from just the meeting when you're on the phone with people, because everybody hates cold calls, everybody hates making them, everybody hates receiving them. But if you're talking to somebody and you say, hey, Mr. CFO of this company, we've been working with X number of CFOs with, I don't know, commercial property or, whatever executive, what is it, executive officer insurance, whatever it is, right? Insert.
Yeah, like a chief
Yeah,
risk officer or a
yeah,
risk manager or somebody
yeah.
like that.
And be like, we found that their biggest issue with, this particular line is this, or because their priority is this, they've gone with this kind of insurance for this particular, like just that alone will separate you from every single person out there who's like, oh, hello, I want to sell you some insurance, right? And so it's how do you use all these tools behind the scenes to empower you to make you sound more credible and the insights that has been dropped on this particular podcast, I feel will help you guys get there. So,
So the other thing is that, if I'm a salesperson and I'm using this as a tool prepping for a meeting, one of the things that I've always done that I have felt has been a really just it's been solid and I've been doing it for 20 years, right? Is before I meet with a prospect, I send them a proposed agenda for what the meeting is going to entail.
yep,
And then I always ask them for their feedback. Here are the things that I think are important based on the research I've done.
yep,
Please feel free to edit if there's anything you'd like for me to include, let
yep,
me know. If there's anything that's not important to you, please let me know to remove it because I want to make sure that we're getting the absolute most out of our
yep,
time that I can. Now
yep,
you can use Chat GPT to take all of this information that you've put into it and
yep.
have it give you the optimized agenda for how that sales call should go for you.
Exactly. And what you can do on top of that to increase your show rate is when you're in that ChatGPT prompt window that you're talking about, you can say, what kind of lead magnet could I create for this particular customer that would be impactful? It'll give you some information and literally just come up with a quick one page. It'll be like, hey, ahead of time, before you jump on this call, here is a top five things that CFOs in the financial services industry get wrong about this line, or here are five metrics that CFOs in the financial service industry care about, right? Because you want to increase your chance of that person coming, because between the time that you book the call and they make the call, they very well could forget because so much happens. So embed that into your invitation as well to increase your chances of them coming, and then that credibility as well. And then one thing that you can think about is the night before or the morning before, afternoon before. There are free tools out there like Loom, like Vidyard. Like Vidyard's my personal favorite, and it can either take like selfie video of you, or you can share your screen and it puts your face in a little bubble. So what you can do is shoot a little 30, 60-second video and be like, hey, Mr. Customer, looking forward to our call tomorrow. Just to give you the rundown, our agenda, to your point, David, this is our agenda. We are going to talk about da 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 da. You can expect to get da 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 out of the call, and our potential next step will be da 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 da. Thanks so much. See you tomorrow. Send that over. It embeds into your email so the customer can click it. If you pay for the paid version of Vidyard, I never have, free's been good enough for me, but if you want to pay for it, it'll give you analytics of this many people have seen it, if it's been forwarded on, this person's seen it, this is how much of the video they've seen it, this is how many minutes it's been watched for. Really great analytics. And it's little things like this that a lot of reps are not doing, but they are immensely powerful.
Yeah, and in my case, the paid version will integrate with HubSpot, so that's even better. But
Yep.
you actually just said the one thing that I was going to say, probably a little nicer than I would say it. But the reality is, the things we're talking about are the things that made good salespeople great salespeople all along. You're
Yep.
just taking that approach and you're modifying it and you're leveraging technology to your
Yep.
point earlier. What I don't think most people understand is the people that we considered to be exceptional and tech forward thinking because they had automation, they had email marketing, they had a CRM in place. Those
Yep.
aren't the best in class anymore. Those are the people that are now average. And if you're
Mhm.
not doing at least that much, you're below average right
Yep.
out of the box. You have
Yep.
to build from there and take it to the next level. And how are we going to implement the new technology to push
Yep.
our game forward? And the
Yep.
reality is, man, not everybody's going to do that because,
Yep.
especially in the insurance industry, it's still going to be the law of large numbers. They're going to be able to make X number of calls to get X number of appointments, to get X number of presentations, to get X number of people to buy from them. And
Yep.
look, I will always believe that if you dial for dollars, you will get results. If you do cold call marketing drops, you will
Yep.
get results. But where you get better results is if you follow some of the framework that we laid out, because
Yep.
it makes the drops better, it makes the calls better, it's a more efficient use of your time. For
Mhm.
crying out loud, you could be using ChatGPT to schedule your day for you based on
Yeah.
what your activities are that you need to be doing. You
Yep.
could put your metrics in. So when somebody comes in to Killing Commercial specifically, or Power Producer Basecamp, I created a producer one page business plan, and business plan is not the right word for it. It's more
Yep.
like an activity plan. But
Yep.
basically, you can plug in, here's how much money I want to make by the end of the year, and you put your conversion percentages in based on what you project them to be. Then as you
Yep.
make your calls, have your appointments over month by month, you can put in your real numbers, but it's ultimately going to give you the activity that you need to have on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis, that if you're doing these things, you're going
Yep.
to ultimately get to this number based on the math. Take that information, put it in there, and have it plan your day. You could even
Yep.
take a prospect list geographically, pop it in there, and have it
Yep.
give you the optimal route and how to deal with those people if you're doing in-person drops or
Yep.
whatever else. I mean, there's no limit
Yeah.
to how we can use ChatGPT to make us better salespeople.
Yep.
It's limited by our inability to think about what's going to differentiate me. What's the
Yeah.
piece of information that I need to have that nobody else is going to have that's going to make me look better or make this an easier job for me? And how can I get that from ChatGPT? What's the question I need to ask, or what is the direction that I need to give it? And if you don't take the time
Yep.
to sit down and think about those things, then you're throwing caution to the wind at that point. You're never going to get a leg up on your
Yeah.
competition. And the same thing holds true to something you said earlier. But if you're going out and you're booking appointments, I would be taking the transcript of every single phone call that I get, that I have, every interaction, push it into Chat GPT and say, what did I
Yep.
do well? What did
Yep.
I miss? Why
Yep.
did I get this appointment booked? How should I
Yep.
replicate this across different industries?
Yeah.
there's no limit to what you can ask it. And, to Lance's point, you can't solely rely on it because it still is going to have hallucinations and other things. But you're going
Mhm.
to be so far ahead of your competition. And it goes back to what I tell my own producers all the time. We
Yeah.
have to slow down to speed up. If you
Yeah.
can just stop and put a framework around this and put a system in place, you're
Mhm.
going to take the time that ChatGPT saves you from research and everything else into
Yep.
coming up with better questions that are more strategic and
Mhm.
better prompts. And guess what? You can even ask it, hey, I've asked you all of these questions. What are some questions that I missed that would help me in my sales career? And it's going to
Yeah.
give you a list of those too.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And one, like you're absolutely right. It's using the technology the best that you can and structuring like sales has always been good. Like sales has always been structured around some kind of framework, like not like scripts and what have you, but like a general structure to your point about asking ChatGPT to book out this is how my day is going to look in terms of individual activities. But it's the overall structure, you know, and I think plugging all these parts in and on the customer intelligence side, ChatGPT is great. One thing you can do if you want to, and this will be for all the hyper diligent people, is if you want to sort of double click and go a bit deeper on that when it does come to reaching out to customers, there's another platform called Crystal Knows. So if you Google Crystal Knows, you go to their website, and how that works is
Is
you
it
put
KNOWS?
yeah, Crystal knows like knows stuff, right? And what you do is you put somebody's LinkedIn, like if I was to prospect you, for example, I would take your LinkedIn profile, put it into Crystal Knows, and what it will do is it basically shows me your personality type and the kind of person that you are. And it'll be if you're going to approach David, use this kind of language. Is he overly professional? Is he more casual? What words are going to work, what words are not going to work. And then that way, when you are reaching out, if you can combine those two things, speaking to the customer in terms of problem, impact, solution, outcome that you were talking about, plus this is who that particular prospect is, that's going to be extremely beneficial. I would probably save that for like the top dogs, like the whales out there, the people that are like massively, massively hard to get in front of. Because I will tell you for free, there's probably nobody that you compete against that's doing that. And then that is going to differentiate you to David's point about this is how you stand out in the new sales world from anybody, right? And you can also use the same approach for conferences because we all get lists when we go to conference and we say, hey, I want to talk to these 50 people. Again, I'm meeting these 50 people at the conference, put into ChatGPT, say these is their companies, what should I speak to them about? And then book in that with Crystal Knows. So when I go up to David, I know to be outgoing and I know to use, fun adjectives and I like to have, this kind of tone. And that's going to resonate with him as a person instead of me coming in trying to be, data scientist, like super just flat and nonchalant, right? Because we're not going to connect on that level. So again, you don't have to. These are just the tools out there. Again, if you want to be the top sales rep in this new environment, or the new way that sales works. But that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, the other thing too, and I mean, it depends on who your ideal prospect is because if you're dealing with service contractors, they're probably not going to be out on LinkedIn posting or whatever else, right? But if you're dealing with the CFO of software companies or something like that where maybe they do have a LinkedIn presence, the other thing you can do is you can go get a dozen of their posts, copy paste them in there. It's going to learn their voice and then it's going to tailor your message to how they talk and it takes all the guesswork out of it.
Exactly, exactly. And what you just described is the new way to look at sales because the two qualities and values that I personally believe make great sales reps is grit and resourcefulness. And neither of those can be taught. They can be adapted and maybe you can help people, excuse me, to get to that point. But I think at the root level, I would take somebody without a college degree in their first sales job ever if they have grit, if they have the determination, if they have that will, to your point of, am I going to do the research? Am I going to learn the industry, right? Over somebody that had 20 years of experience, because when I say 20 years of experience, all I hear is I've done the same thing for 20 years, right? And so that those are two qualities. And resourcefulness, honestly, is huge because especially as somebody that came from New Zealand, like I moved to the States in 2013, I knew nobody here. I had zero professional contacts. I had zero experience working in America. I had no idea how anything worked. And my first job was with a SaaS company, right? And so I had to be extremely resourceful, reach out to everybody around me. And that's how I made President's Club, finishing 12th in the world in my first 18 months with the company, right, is because of that resourcefulness. And the best reps I've ever worked with, they do exactly that. And so emulate that resourcefulness, use all the tools around you. Like there's a personal friend of mine, Rebecca Dorn. She is absolutely incredible and she does exactly that. The things that she comes up with, I'm just like, I literally never would have thought of that. So as a sales rep, be like, how can I be resourceful? Which levers can I pull? And in my opinion, a lot of what you and I are talking about here, David, that should be either in the heads of the commercial lines and personal lines managers, or it should at least be on the radar. Because as a manager, as we know, we have to uplift our reps, we have to arm them, we have to remove these blockers, right? So if these commercial and personal lines managers are out there researching all the technology and be like, hey guys, look into this. You don't have to necessarily teach them, but at least show them the path. And then that way it will increase the chances of your entire team succeeding.
100%, man. I mean, it all goes back to like it's funny because we're talking about all this stuff in technology like it's cutting edge, and it is. I mean, AI changes every single day, but if
Yeah.
you look at the behaviors that are required to
Hmm.
be successful in using it, they're the exact same behaviors that have made salespeople
Yep.
successful for
Yeah.
years. And
Yep.
to your point, man, I think that life conditions us to be successful in where we ultimately end up.
Hmm.
And, when I was a kid, one of the things, that I talk about is, we moved every 2 to 3 years religiously the entire time I was growing up. And I hated it. I hated it at the time because I would get to a point where I made friends. You'd
Hmm.
leave school at the end of the school year and you'd find out over the summer you're moving to a new city in a new state
Yep.
and you don't get to go back. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have the internet. We wouldn't even be able to tell people where we went for the most part unless we
Yep.
picked up the phone and called them on our landline. And then most of the time, we didn't even have their phone number because we just were kids running with
Yep.
them at school. You go
Yep.
to a new place, you're starting over again. And I'll tell you, when you talk about grit and resourcefulness, try being the new kid every other year when you
Hmm.
move somewhere. I'm not going to pretend like I've walked a mile in your shoes coming to a completely different country, but I can
Yep.
tell you when you move from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to Birmingham, Alabama, you just moved to a different country
Oh
for all
yeah.
practical purposes. They're
Oh,
light years different than each other.
yeah.
And I think that the conditioning that I had as a kid who moved around, lived in different parts of the country where different things were important and influenced people, and you learn how to adapt. That's why I can walk into any room today and find common ground with anybody else. And it
Yeah.
wasn't easy, man. It was not
Oh,
easy when you were a kid doing that. I got
yeah.
in plenty of fist fights. I got my rear end kicked. I kicked plenty of rear end. But at the end of the day, we figured out how to make it work because failure was never an option. You either did what you needed to do to survive or you
Yep.
were going to live a miserable life, man. And it just wasn't an option.
Yeah, I agree, man. And at the end of the day, I would argue that the best sales reps have been through the worst stuff because that toughness, that resilience, that dedication, that commitment, that overcoming barriers, like sales when done right is the best job in the world, but sales when done wrong is the worst job in the world. And so you need to have all of those qualities. To your point, no technology is ever going to give that to you. You need to have those as a base, right? Because for all these people worrying that AI is going to replace their job, the one thing AI is never going to do is person to person connection, person to person relationship. So the mindset should be, how do I use this technology to create a connection with somebody, to create a relationship, right? Because to your point, David, the reason why you can go into any room and connect with anybody is because you have encountered so many people over the course of your life. You've learned how to not adapt, but mold yourself. You're kind of like a chameleon. Like you can mold yourself to different people, right? And that comes from pure experience. But you can also replicate that, especially if you are new to insurance, because we all know how hard it is to get people into insurance because the industry is aging out. And we want to get these younger kids into the industry. Well, they don't want to because they're scared of the industry. Well, you've just given them a really good low barrier of entry to give them that confidence that when you walk into these rooms, at least you sound like them. You know, like you can learn how to talk to people. That's a very different skill to what you're saying. But at a base level, if you take everything that we're saying, at least it's going to give you the confidence. Because one thing that I've always lived by is if you had the choice between confidence and competence, I would rather be competent than confident because if you don't know how to ride a motorcycle,
Hey, there's a lot of people in my industry that are confident and have no competence whatsoever.
yeah, I agree, man. And you can see through those people on LinkedIn really quickly. But again, like if someone said, "Hey, here's a Harley Davidson," right? Well, I want the confidence. I'm so confident I'm going to get on this bike. Versus do I have the competence to ride that bike, right? And so you can build your competence, and then over time, that confidence is naturally going to build
So you
because
said two things, man, that I literally have personal stories for. So number one, I had never ridden a motorcycle in my entire life and had
yeah,
no clue whatsoever how to ride it, but I had a friend who had one he needed to get rid of. Absolutely beautiful bike. It was an '03. It is an '03 100th anniversary edition, Softail, has all kinds of upgrades. It had like 15 or $16,000 worth of upgrades to the bike, and I
no,
bought it on a song. And my
yeah,
whole thing was, this guy's selling it to me at a discount. I'll just buy it and flip it. Then
yeah,
it got here, and I'm like, man, I really like this bike. I need to figure out how to ride it. I didn't just get on the bike and teach myself. I
yeah,
went over to the Harley store where they teach you how to ride a motorcycle, and I
yeah,
spent 2 weekends going through the course of how to ride it. I had a functional knowledge, which would be the same as me getting my license versus my designation. Then I had to go out and practice and actually ride it on the road to get that level of confidence up, as well as my competence. So the motorcycle analogy is a good one. But the other story was when I got into the insurance industry, you know, I worked with a recruiter because I was coming out of retail, and the guy that told me that
mhm,
originally recruited me to come in had a non-compete that he still had like a year and a half on, and there was nowhere for me to go.
yeah,
So I decided I'm not going to wait on this guy. I'm going to go get my license so that when his agency's ready, I'm ready to rock and roll, and I'll have a year and a half under my belt. So I found a recruiter to help me find a job as a
mhm,
producer at an agency. And I got, honestly, I got pretty beaten up over it because I was making 100 and some $1,000s a year, and
mhm,
I couldn't get hired for a $25,000 a year junior producer's job at any agency. Nobody was willing to take a chance on me. Nobody had a structured program that
yeah,
would give me a proven system that if I implemented that would lead me to success, which is one of the reasons I ended up creating Killing Commercial. I wanted to help people who were in my shoes because there are a lot of talented people that aren't in the industry that
yeah,
just need a coach and a roadmap that has been there and done that can show them how to do it. But when I went through, I did the personality test. And I'll never forget this. The lady that was the recruiter said, I think you're going to have a really hard time getting a job in the insurance industry. And I said, why would you say that? She said, because of anybody that's ever come in here as a producer candidate, I don't know that I've ever seen somebody score almost equally in all four quadrants of the personality test. She said, it's almost like you're a chameleon. And when you said that, that's exactly what resonated with me. And I said, well, the insurance industry is going to lose out on a good opportunity then. And she said,
yeah,
what do you mean? I said, because that tells me I can relate to anybody that I walk in and talk to. And
yeah,
they should want more people like me because I'm going to cast a wider net and be able to relate to more people. And she said, well,
yeah.
you certainly don't have a problem overcoming objections, do you? And I said, no, I don't. And that's the message that I would pass on to anybody who pushed back to you. And
Yeah.
sure enough, I had people who said, nope, he's not rated high enough in this category. You know what
Yeah.
I did? I remembered every single agency that told me that I wasn't going to make it. And as soon as I got my license, I went out and targeted their accounts because I wanted to send them a message and remind them that they had the chance first. And now I was going to cost them money instead of making them money.
Yeah. And that's fantastic, and that is a direct result of everything that you've experienced in your life because outside of, work and profession, all those things, it's like these bad things that happen to you in your life. It's like, what's the blessing there? Like, you went through all this hardship and it was hard moving around and you lost your friends. You had no way of contacting them. Now you're in a new school, new friends, all these things, right? At the time, I'm sure that was really challenging to go through and probably emotionally draining because you miss your friends. Now you got to start over again. Well, what were the blessings? What characteristics did you have to develop in order to adapt to that situation? And so if you do go through hardship in your life and through these bad things, it's like, how did I get through it? What did I have to do? What skills did I have to build, right? And then how are they benefiting me? I mean, you are sitting in this seat right now because of what you came from, right? So I know in sales it gets hard because you feel beaten down because people tell you to, kick rocks and literally sales reps, I think, get treated worse than parking wardens, to be honest, because it's true, and
I
so
agree.
it's so hard to like it takes a lot of self-esteem to become a successful sales rep, which is why sales isn't for everybody. But I think if you can take a look at your personal experience and be like, hey, what did I go through in my life? At the time it might have sucked and I might be holding on to that, because of XYZ reason. But how did it benefit me? Like, how did I overcome that? And how is that adding to me now? And how is that on my strength profile? To your point, when you go to this personality tests, right? And so that's what I coach reps to do is be like, look, I can tell you for free, you have been through stuff 1,000 times worse than picking up the phone, calling somebody you don't know, and them telling you to go away in far harsher terms, right? And so don't worry about it. At the end of the day, as soon as you click that phone and it's hung up, that's it. It's done, right? Like, look at what you went through in your life. Like, maybe you lost a loved one. Maybe, you I don't know, has some form of accident. Maybe you are suffering some kind of health condition, right? Like somebody that's lost a loved one that went before they needed to versus somebody on the phone that you don't know saying something harsh to you because you're a sales rep trying to sell them stuff. Like it's just understanding that, and then that's how you can push through that, right? And then on the flip side of that, the best advice I was ever given. So I worked for Ricoh, New Zealand, selling photocopiers, and my sales manager said the best time to ever make a cold call is as soon as you get a deal done. As soon as that customer signs that contract, you get the DocuSign back saying, ABC customer has signed, and you're like, yes, oh my God, elation, great, I've just closed the deal. Get on the phones, man. And then that excitement will come through on the phone and that person on the other end because emotional state is transferable. The person on the end receiving that call, it's going to change. I promise you, it's going to change again.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, and I'm going to wrap up with this because we're pushing an hour. I told you, man, we were going to get going, and then it was going to we'd be over before we knew it, but longer than we
Yeah,
thought. But
yeah.
I think that over the course of my life specifically, I've been conditioned that I had to be in new environments and do new things
Yep.
so many times that
Yep.
when it comes to looking at new technology or this, that, or the other, I'm never afraid to try
Mhm.
something new. I'm
Yep.
also, I think one of the reasons why I'm a good producer is because I'm naturally curious and I ask naturally curious questions. I don't necessarily, I'm going to ask the questions that I need to ask about the business and show that I understand it, but I'm not afraid to ask that question that's maybe one level deeper on a personal basis than what another producer would because they're afraid they're going to disrupt the opportunity to get the deal by
Yep.
asking that below the surface level question of the person that you're meeting with. That's another, another big thing. The other
Yeah.
thing it's allowed me to do is I'll try anything once, man. I have a lot of life experiences because I'm not afraid to try things. So I
Yeah.
think a lot of people, my friends will joke with me like, is there anything you haven't done? Well, no, if it's been presented as a possibility and whether I have the choice to do it or not do it, I'm going to
Yep.
do it 100% of the time because now it gives me something to talk about. I think people sometimes think, oh, he's full of BS. There's no way he's done this or done that. No, I made a decision early in life that if I had a chance to say yes or no to something, it's almost always going to be yes because it only makes me, number one, live a more fruitful life and have greater life experience, but it makes me more relatable to a broader audience over time because
Yeah.
of that. So, I just think there's so much more. We're gonna have to have you back, man, because we could go for
Yeah.
another hour easy. But I
Uh,
got to wrap this one up. How do
yeah.
they get in touch with you?
Yeah, just LinkedIn, man. Just drop me a note, connect with me. Yeah, anybody has any questions, anybody wants advice or guidance, just hit me up, man. Like, I'll help anybody who wants to help themselves. So,
Cool deal. And by the way, if you're listening to this, you have to go check out the post. I took an awesome screenshot and put it up there while we were recording. So I wanted to memorialize this. I think this is, I called it 20 minutes in. This was going to be an awesome episode. I stand by that. This was really good conversation. People, the ball's in your court. It's up to you. You're either going to execute on this or you're not. But I can tell you that for the last hour, we gave salespeople a roadmap that if you just followed what we said step by step and you made it part of your process and you became disciplined to the point that it was a habit, you're going to have the greatest sales year in 2026. It's going to take you a little bit of time to acclimate and implement, but if you plan on doing it going into 26, mark my words, you'll have the best year you've had yet. Lance, I appreciate you taking time, man. I got to bounce because I got a 1 o'clock call with a client. So we'll catch you next time, man. See you soon.
appreciate you, man. Thanks,
Yes,
everyone.
sir. Take care.